God says, I let them leave because they could not enter the destiny meant for you. And when they walked away, you thought heaven had abandoned you. You thought love had failed. You thought your prayers had been ignored. You thought the silence meant you were not chosen. But what if their departure was not rejection? What if it was protection? What if God removed them because their spirit could not survive the version of you that destiny was calling forward? Because some people can love your pain, but they cannot walk with your purpose. Some people can hold your hand in the wilderness, but they cannot stand beside you in the promised land. And maybe the person you begged God to bring back was the very person God had to remove, so you could finally become who you were born to be. Chapter 1. The departure that felt like rejection. I know what it feels like when someone leaves and your whole body takes it personally. Not just your mind, your body. Your chest gets heavy. Your stomach tightens. You wake up in the middle of the night reaching for a phone that has nothing new on it. No message. No explanation. No soft return. Just silence. And in that silence, your mind starts filling in the blanks with pain. Maybe I was not enough. Maybe I loved too deeply. Maybe I scared them away. Maybe God let me lose the only person who ever touched that hidden place inside me. That is what it looked like at first. A loss. A rejection. A door closing in your face. But something deeper was happening. God was not punishing you. God was separating you. There is a difference. Punishment leaves you empty. Separation prepares you. Punishment breaks your worth. Separation breaks your attachment to what cannot go where your soul is going. And here is the part that hurts. Sometimes God will allow someone to leave before you are emotionally ready to let them go. Not because your love was fake. Not because your connection meant nothing. Not because you imagined the spiritual depth. But because their presence was starting to cost you your future. You were shrinking to keep them comfortable. You were silencing your intuition to keep the peace. You were accepting confusion because you were afraid of losing the connection. And God saw what you could not see yet. They were not walking beside your destiny. They were standing in the doorway of it. Lesson of this chapter. What felt like rejection may have been divine separation. God did not remove them because you were unworthy. He removed them because your destiny required room they could not occupy. Chapter 2. Why they could not enter your destiny. There is an uncomfortable truth about destiny. Not everyone who loves parts of you can handle all of you. Some people can love your softness. They can love your attention. They can love the way you show up, forgive, understand, wait, and make them feel seen. But they cannot handle your rise. They cannot handle your clarity. They cannot handle your boundaries. They cannot handle the version of you that no longer begs to be chosen. And that is why God says, I let them leave because they could not enter the destiny meant for you. Not because they were evil. Not because every memory was a lie. Not because your bond was meaningless. But because destiny has a frequency. And when your soul starts rising, everything attached to your old wounds begins to shake. You start noticing things you used to excuse. You start feeling exhausted around energy you once called love. You start realizing that peace should not feel like abandonment. Love should not feel like anxiety. Connection should not require self-betrayal. And suddenly, the relationship that once felt sacred begins to feel heavy. Why? Because your spirit is moving. Your life is expanding. Your calling is becoming louder. Your nervous system is learning that chaos is not chemistry. And they could not come with you because they were still attached to the version of you that survived. But God was calling forward the version of you that would live. Lesson of this chapter. Some people cannot enter your destiny because they are bonded to your wounded self, not your healed self. Their departure reveals the difference between attachment and alignment. Chapter 3. When God removes what your heart still wants. The hardest removals are the ones your heart did not agree to. You can understand something spiritually and still cry about it at night. You can know someone was not good for your peace and still miss their voice. You can know the connection was draining and still remember the way their eyes softened for 1 second. You can know God is protecting you and still whisper, why did it have to hurt like this? That is the human part. Healing does not mean you instantly stop wanting what wounded you. Sometimes your soul accepts what your nervous system still grieves. You still remember the late conversations, the signs, the synchronicities, the pull, the moments that felt too deep to be accidental. And maybe they were deep. Maybe the connection did awaken you. Maybe they did mirror something sacred. Maybe God used them to reveal parts of your heart you had buried. But awakening someone is not the same as being allowed to walk into their destiny. Some people are assigned to trigger your awakening. They are not assigned to inherit your future. That distinction can break your heart open. Because you wanted the awakening and the ending to be the same person. You wanted the one who opened your soul to also be the one who stayed. But God saw the full path. You saw the chemistry. God saw the capacity. You saw the potential. God saw the pattern. You saw who they could become. God saw who they were choosing to remain. Lesson of this chapter: God can remove someone your heart still wants because destiny is not built on potential alone. Love needs capacity, consistency, and spiritual maturity. Chapter 4. The version of you they were attached to. Looking back now, you may realize they loved you most when you were easier to control emotionally. Not in an obvious way. Not always cruelly. Sometimes subtly. They liked when you over-explained. They liked when you softened your needs. They liked when you waited quietly after being hurt. They liked when your fear of losing them made you more available than you should have been. And maybe you called that devotion. But God called it bondage. Because the version of you they were attached to was the version that had not fully remembered their worth. That old self apologized for having feelings. That old self chased closure from someone who kept changing the story. That old self mistook emotional intensity for divine confirmation. That old self believed love meant enduring confusion. But destiny was calling you out of that identity. Slowly, painfully, quietly, you began to feel a new strength forming inside you. Not loud, not cold, not bitter, just clear. You stopped wanting to prove your heart. You stopped needing them to validate the connection. You stopped confusing their distance with your lack of value. And that shift changed everything. Because when you started becoming whole, they could no longer access you through your wounds. That is when the connection started breaking. Not because love disappeared, but because the old contract expired. Lesson of this chapter: they may have been attached to the version of you that abandoned yourself. God allowed separation because your healed self could no longer live inside that old dynamic. Chapter 5. Why their energy could not follow you. Have you ever noticed how some people feel heavier once you start healing? The same conversations drain you more. The same silence hurts differently. The same pattern no longer feels romantic. Your body starts telling the truth before your mind can explain it. You feel tired after talking to them. You feel anxious waiting for them. You feel small when you should feel safe. That is not your imagination. That is your nervous system recognizing misalignment. When God is moving you into a higher destiny, your sensitivity changes. You can no longer tolerate what you once normalized. You can no longer call inconsistency a challenge. You can no longer call emotional absence a spiritual test. You begin to understand that peace is also a sign. Not just numbers. Not just dreams. Not just intense pull. Peace. A love that does not make your body brace. A presence that does not leave your soul starving. A connection that does not require you to disappear in order to keep it alive. And maybe their energy could not follow you because they were still living from fear. Fear of intimacy. Fear of accountability. Fear of being truly seen. Fear of becoming the person love required them to become. So God let them leave. Because where you're going, fear cannot lead. Lesson of this chapter: their energy could not follow your destiny because healing changes what your spirit can tolerate. Divine alignment feels like peace, not constant nervous system survival. Chapter 6. The pain of being protected before you understand. At first, protection can feel like cruelty. That is the part nobody tells you. When God blocks the message, you feel ignored. When God closes the door, you feel punished. When God lets them choose someone else, choose silence, choose distance. choose themselves over the connection, you feel replaced. And honestly, that kind of pain can make you question everything. You may sit in your room with the lights off, replaying every conversation. You may wonder if you missed a sign. You may blame yourself for being too emotional, too intense, too spiritual, too honest. But what if you were not too much? What if they were simply not ready for the weight of your destiny? Because destiny is not only blessing, it is responsibility. It requires emotional maturity, truth, integrity, spiritual endurance. And someone who cannot meet you in truth cannot walk with you in purpose. God knew that if they stayed, you might have kept choosing the connection over your calling. You might have delayed your healing. You might have ignored your gifts. You might have continued pouring sacred energy into someone who only knew how to receive, not reciprocate. So God protected you before you understood the protection. And yes, it hurt. But sometimes grace arrives as an ending. Lesson of this chapter: divine protection does not always feel gentle at first. Sometimes God saves your future by removing what your heart is still trying to hold. Chapter 7. How Destiny Exposes Misaligned Love. Destiny has a way of revealing what emotion tries to hide. When your life starts shifting, people's true capacity shows. Some celebrate your growth. Some feel threatened by it. Some disappear when you stop needing them the way you used to. That is painful to witness, because you may realize they were comfortable with your pain, but uncomfortable with your power. They knew how to be present when you were broken. But when you started standing taller, speaking clearer, praying deeper, choosing peace, something in them pulled away. Why? Because your healing confronted the parts of them they did not want to face. Your boundaries exposed their inconsistency. Your peace exposed their chaos. Your self-worth exposed the places where they benefited from your self-doubt. And this is where many chosen souls struggle. You keep trying to make them understand. You keep explaining your heart. You keep hoping they will see the sacredness of what God is doing in you. But someone who is committed to staying asleep will experience your awakening as pressure. They may call you different, distant, changed. And they are right. You are changed. You are no longer available for love that keeps you spiritually small. Lesson of this chapter: destiny exposes whether love is aligned or attached. The people meant for your future will not require you to shrink to keep them close. Chapter 8. The silence was a sacred separation. There was a season when the silence almost broke you. You checked. You waited. You listened for signs in everything. A song, a dream, a number, a memory. You wondered if they could feel you. You wondered if they missed you. You wondered if God would bring them back changed. And in that waiting, something unexpected happened. You began hearing yourself again. Not immediately, not perfectly, but slowly. Under the noise of longing, your own soul started speaking. You realized how exhausted you had been. You realized how much emotional space they occupied. You realized that your prayers had become centered around one person instead of your own becoming. That is when silence became sacred. Not because it stopped hurting, but because it started healing. The absence created room. Room for clarity. Room for self-respect. Room for God to restore the parts of you that had been living in emotional survival. Sometimes separation is not empty space. Sometimes separation is a holy room where God rebuilds your identity without the interference of someone who only knew your wounded patterns. Lesson of this chapter: the silence was not proof that God forgot you. It was sacred space where your spirit could detach, heal, and hear divine direction again. Chapter 9. God was preparing a higher love. Here is something your heart may not have been ready to hear before. God did not remove them to leave you unloved. He removed them to teach you what love cannot be. Love cannot be constant confusion. Love cannot be emotional hunger. Love cannot be you carrying the whole connection while the other person hides behind fear. Love cannot require you to betray your nervous system and call it faith. God is preparing a higher love. And higher love may not arrive with the same chaos your wounds once recognized as passion. It may feel calmer, slower, safer. At first, your nervous system may not trust it. Because if you have been trained by inconsistency, peace can feel unfamiliar. If you have been addicted to emotional highs and lows, stability can feel boring. If you have mistaken longing for destiny, mutual presence can feel almost too simple. But divine love does not need to destroy you to transform you. The love meant for your destiny will not compete with your purpose. It will support it. It will not be intimidated by your light. It will honor it. It will not ask you to abandon your calling for connection. It will walk beside you as you become. Lesson of this chapter: God removes misaligned love to prepare you for higher love. The love meant for your destiny will bring peace, not constant emotional survival. Chapter 10. You were not left behind, you were being lifted. One day, you will look back and understand why they had to leave. Not with bitterness. Not with the need to prove anything. Just with a quiet breath. You will see how much you changed after they were gone. How your prayers became deeper. How your standards became clearer. How your heart became softer without becoming weaker. You will realize that the ending did not destroy you. It revealed you. The person you became after the loss is the person your destiny needed. And maybe that is why God did not answer the prayer the way you wanted. Because you were asking for restoration. But God was preparing elevation. You were asking for them to return. But God was teaching you not to abandon yourself again. You were asking why they left. But God was saying, because they could not enter where I am taking you. And when that truth finally lands, something inside you exhales. You stop chasing what left. You stop negotiating with closed doors. You stop calling protection rejection. You begin to understand. They did not leave with your destiny. They only left the path. And you are still walking. Lesson of this chapter: you were not left behind. You were being lifted into a destiny that required clarity, peace, and a love that could meet your healed self. If this message reached the part of you that has been trying to make sense of someone's departure, write in the comments, God protected my destiny. Let that be your declaration today. And if you are still healing from a connection that felt spiritual, intense, confusing, and impossible to forget, subscribe to Divine Magnetic Souls. This space is for the chosen ones, the twin flame souls, the deep feelers, and the hearts learning that divine love never requires self-abandonment. Your separation was not the end of your story. It may have been the beginning of your alignment.